Welcome back. All right, so we're going to discuss the Chicago Blackhawks. We're going to discuss them because they're off to an 0-5-1 start, and with last night's game, they have now set an NHL record for futility. They haven't held a lead. Normally, when I do videos on slow starts that a team has, I'll talk about leads they've had and they've lost, or they had this comeback and just didn't work out. And for Chicago, there isn't really that story, not since the second game of the year. And I don't have Jeremy Colleton on the board, but yeah, Jeremy Colleton's got to be on the hot seat right now. And this is kind of big news from around the NHL. And there's a lot of blame being thrown on certain players, so I'll discuss that as well. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and go through this and look at their early start and how it could get worse. This absolutely it could get worse. The Chicago Blackhawks came into this year with expectations that were kind of all over the place. There were some that expected them to be maybe a wild card. There were some that saw them as maybe a top three in the division. That maybe the Central's not as tough as it was the last time we had a full NHL season, and then maybe they could move up. Others had them outside the playoffs. Personally, I didn't see them as a playoff team, but I thought they'd be competitive. And so far, it really hasn't been the case. This is a team that early on in the season kind of looks done. Of course, they were in the news in the offseason for all the. I mean, outside of the acquisition of Fleury and picking up Seth Jones and giving him his huge contract, which hasn't kicked in yet, they were also in the news, of course, for the ongoing investigation, which is still ongoing. Once that investigation's done, we can discuss that and the ramifications of that and what it'll do to the organization. And of course, that will be part of the speculation is that maybe some of that's hanging over the organization. I can't see it. I can't see it on the ice. I can't see some kind of controversy off the ice affecting this team right now in this moment and during the games. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? I don't think so. But again, we'll see what happens with that, right? So they started the season against Colorado. Colorado seen as a team that's supposed to be a Stanley Cup contender, maybe a Cup favorite, which again, we'll see how they do. But Chicago loses 4-2, and they lose dramatically. They're down 3-0 at 9:34 of the first period. By the end of the game, they're outshot 36-34, so the shots are close. Their goal scorers that night were Kubalik and Murphy. But again, being down 3-0 that early, Marc-Andre Fleury kind of getting a baptism by fire behind that defense and realizing he's not in Chicago or he's not in Vegas anymore. Now he's in Chicago. New Jersey beats them 4-3. That's an overtime win for New Jersey. And for Chicago, they did tie it. They tied it. It was Kubalik at 19:34 of the third period. And then Jack Hughes with an absolutely gorgeous goal at 57 seconds of overtime. And they were outshot 29-27. It was a close game. The goals in that one, DeBrincat, Doc, and Kubalik. So Kubalik with goals in back-to-back games. Good start to the season for him. And really, in all honesty, that was a sign that, well, they should be okay, right? You lose to Colorado, there's no shame in that. And then against New Jersey, it's an overtime game, and sure, fine. Then against Pittsburgh, it falls apart again. They lose 5-2, but it was 4-0 for Pittsburgh at 11:25 of the first. So that is 2 games out of 3. They just weren't ready out of the gate. They weren't ready to play. And this is where, if you want to make the statement that this is on the coach, I will tend to agree with that part of it. When your team in multiple games doesn't look ready to play, I ask myself, what's going on with the coach? Why is it that they're not ready? And so, 4-0 at 11:25 of the first. They were outshot in that game 26-20. The goals were Kane and Doc. So Doc now with back-to-back games with goals. He hasn't had a goal since then. Then the New York Islanders beat them 4-1. This game was close though. It was 1-0 for the Islanders after 2, and then it's 4-0 at 11:06 of the third period. So they were fine after 2, and then it falls apart in the third period. So again, it's instead of them not being ready in the first, now they're ready in the first. Now it's in the third where they have that. And again, it seems to happen in bunches for Chicago, where all of a sudden the puck's going in their net. The shots were 40-29. in favor of Chicago in that one. I know it says New York Islanders, but it was 40-29 in favor of Chicago. So this was one of those, they played well, but Sorokin said no. They score the shutout beating goal at 19:34 of the third period. So if you want to read the tea leaves in this, they tie it at 19:34 of the third period here. They break a shutout at 19:34 of the third. In 19:34, the Blackhawks win the cup. So if you want to go just bonkers with this, fine. The Blackhawks, 19:34 shows up twice on the board. They're going to come back from this 0-5-1 start. They're going to win the Stanley Cup. So if you're a Hawks fan, you're welcome. That's the silver lining I found. I thought, what happened in 1934? Oh, they won the Stanley Cup. There you go. And they weren't a favorite to win it that year either. So there you go. So then the Canucks come into town, and I thought, okay, so this is a situation where Chicago hasn't got a win. Vancouver hadn't necessarily been playing well on the road trip. Doesn't matter. The Canucks beat them 4-1. Now it was 1-1 after one, but it was 3-1 Vancouver after the second. So a rough second period for Chicago. The shots were 30-25 for Chicago. And again, the storyline of this one, Thatcher Demko shuts them down. But they're only getting one goal. So they only had 4 goals in their last 3 games to that point. And then there's last night's game, 6-3 loss against Detroit. It was tied 1-1 after one, but the Wings score 3 goals in 4 minutes and 57 seconds of the second period. So the defense. And what I really noticed in that game, I mentioned it in the review, I'll throw it in here, I noticed that the Wings were really charging at Seth Jones in that game. And it wasn't just on him necessarily either. I thought Connor Murphy, I thought Jake McCabe, and Gustafsson as well. There were moments where you could look at any of those defensemen, but when you're noticing the defensemen like that, that's not a great indicator that things are going well for the defense, right? They were outshot in that game 37-35. And again, you know, they've had a couple of good games where they can't score, which this is where the advanced stats come in, right? Where you can say, well, they outshot the Islanders, they outshot Pittsburgh, and so you know they outshot, or they were outshot by Pittsburgh, but they only allowed 26 shots against Pittsburgh, and they outshot Vancouver. So usually they'll win those games. The problem is they didn't win those games, and it's not a predictor of the future. So that's where I do follow those stats. I do follow all of that. I follow accounts on Twitter that post all this stuff. It's interesting, but I don't think it necessarily predicts a better future. I've had the discussion with expected goals before where I'm like, real goals tend to trump the expected goals. That's just, you know, you don't very often see a team after a game where they lose 4-2 say, hey, we're celebrating because the expected goals, we were ahead 5-3, so we won. And then when somebody points at the standings, they go, we won. So there. So there's a lot, and not only that, but we've seen before where a team will be playing well while they're losing, and then it starts to affect their confidence. That starts to erode, and eventually they're not playing well while they're losing, and it just cascades from there. Now, their upcoming next 5, it's not an easy road. So next up, they're at home against Toronto, which, of course, means that people will be looking forward to Steve Dangle's reaction for that if Chicago were to get their first win of the season against Toronto, which he's expecting. And as a Canuck fan, I know that feeling. Then they go to Carolina, so it doesn't get easier. Then they're in St. Louis. Really not easier. St. Louis is not going to take it easy on Chicago. St. Louis is very happy to see Chicago at the bottom. Then they're at home against Ottawa, which that could be your win right there, right? And then they're at home against Carolina. So realistically, over the next 5 games, maybe they win 1 or 2. But the way that they're playing right now, again, not having a lead, there's just that lack of confidence, that lack of finish. 2 goals, 5 goals, 7, 8, 9, 12 goals through 6 games. That's not enough. That's not enough. So we can talk about the defense, we can talk about the goaltending, and I'll get into this over here, but they're also not scoring. So their leading scorer right now, and this is ranked by goals, Kubalik, 3 goals in 6 games. No assists. DeBrincat, 2 goals and 1 assist in 6 games. He's also a -9 in 6 games. So DeBrincat is also off to kind of a tough start statistically, right? The goals aren't going in. He's had his opportunities. I've written his name on the board a lot, not necessarily for goals. Kirby Dach, 2 goals and an assist. Good start, but again, they need more because he's being counted on for more right now. Patrick Kane, who of course missed the last game, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points in 5 games, which is good. But that -7 is uncharacteristic for him. Plus minus is a stat that I understand why people don't like it. I'm not a huge fan of it either. But again, in small sample sizes like this, I think it's a good indicator. You've got a -7 for Kane, a -9 for DeBrincat, a -9 for Seth Jones, a -7 for DeHaan. And it is hard to argue that any of these players have had remarkable starts to the season. Tyler Johnson, a goal and 2 assists in 6 games. Borgstrom, a goal and an assist. Connor Murphy, just the 1 goal in 6 games. Entwistle, 1 goal. That was, of course, the game-tying one here. Taves with 2 assists and a -6. And one storyline, too, that I don't think is getting enough play is that Jonathan Taves is coming off of missing the entire season last year. So a slow start from him statistically is, quite predictable. And he might be being counted on to do too much right now as well. Because he missed the entire year. So he should probably be playing a little bit less. But again, with Chicago, who is going to take those minutes? Now, Seth Jones, he's got 4 assists in 6 games. And it's that old argument, right? Where he's getting the points. And so that will definitely be discussed. But again, watching recent games and watching teams key on him. And it's that, I guess the best way to put it is, it's sort of like when you're watching in football and they're always throwing against the same safety, where they're like, well, that guy's playing really well, so we're going to throw to that side of the field because that safety can't cover. And it feels like teams are going, okay, we're going in. You got Murphy, or you've got McCabe, and then you've got Jones. We're going right at Jones. And whether it's they don't think he's playing well, whether it's that there's a, maybe they feel he doesn't have the confidence. The one thing I noticed last night is the defense backing off and not challenging. So that's a problem. And I've seen that with many teams over the years, and it can be really frustrating where you're giving the forwards way too much real estate. You're letting them just come in and tee off between the hash marks. And those are going to go in. DeHaan with no points is not necessarily a big deal, but the -7 is. Kurashev, no points and a -6. You'd want something out of Kurashev offensively. Interestingly enough, Dylan Strome, who's only played 2 games, has 1 assist. He's the only plus on the team. He's a +1. So Dylan Strome, who may be on his way out of town, I think they'll showcase him for a trade, or maybe they end up being forced to use him because of how bad things are going. He's the guy who has that plus there. Lankinen is 0-1-1 with an .884 save percentage. Fleury's 0-4 with an .839 save percentage. Keep in mind, Marc-Andre Fleury is sitting at 492 wins, and I don't think we realized how difficult getting to 500 was going to be, because it's only 8. And yet, is he going to get those 8 wins this year? He should. The thing for me with Chicago is, I think that the 0-5-1 start means it's going to be really a challenge for them to make the playoffs in a division where it was already going to be difficult, right? Like I said, St. Louis is going to look forward to stomping them while they're down. Most teams will in this division, right? And I don't expect any kind of mercy from teams against them. And we'll see how long Kane's out too, right? Kane's in protocols. We'll see how long he's out. And how long this malaise can last for guys like Taves. How long is DeBrincat going to be producing at half a point per game? They want more than that. Again, there's not enough scoring. The defense has looked like it's a work in progress, and the goaltending hasn't been good enough either. But with one thing with Fleury is that there are rebounds there, but some of the best goalies in the league might give up a lot of rebounds. The defense is geared to clear them out. So you may go, okay, our goaltender, he's going to kick that out. He usually kicks that to the boards. So your defense is geared that, all right, when that rebound comes, and it will, it's going over there, and we're going to clear it out from there. It's something that I've watched teams do over the years. Again, I've talked about it in reviews. where it's almost like the goaltender saves it and he intentionally kicks that rebound out. He intentionally throws that rebound out, knowing it's going to the defenseman. The defenseman coming back knows where that puck's going to go, and that might be coaching too. So I'm not giving Colleton, I'm not giving the assistant coaches a pass, and I don't think this can go much further. If they don't win any games in the next 5 in this, and this is not an easy 5 games, there are no gimmies in here. You might look at Ottawa and say, well, that should be a gimme. Well, Toronto's below 500, so that might be a gimme. I don't think it is. And I think this is going to be a tough haul. And if they don't win any, or I'm even going to say if they do beat, let's say they beat Toronto and lose the next 4. Let's say they beat Ottawa, but they lose the other 4. Let's say they beat St. Louis in a surprise, lose the other 4. If they've won one of their first 10, I would be very surprised if Colleton survives that. Because the expectations this year were higher. You know, the other interesting thing to me too is that, I guess that'd be their first 11. They'd only have won one of their first 11. The interesting thing to me is that this is a team that it felt like was starting to make kind of progress last year, and then what happened to them was they were in a playoff spot in the Central, and then they played the top teams. So they had a relatively easy schedule in the first half, and then they struggled against the top teams in the division. They ended up falling out of the playoffs. But I think that gave a false sense of, hey, we're close. And so they get Jones, and they go out and they get Fleury with the idea that, hey, we're close. And I don't think they were. So I think that's the biggest error. And that's if we're going to discuss errors and good moves and whatnot. So it can still turn around, but it really looks to me like this could be a long season. And the one question that keeps going through my mind too is, how long does Marc-Andre Fleury go through this before he says, you know, I think I'm going to go. And I don't say that to say that, oh, he's a quitter or anything, but if he's like, let's say 2-15 and his save percentage is still down in the 840 region, I can't see Chicago not bringing up either Delia or whoever to try to fix this. Subban maybe comes up, right, and plays a couple of games. And I would honestly be kind of surprised if Fleury, if something didn't happen there. But again, we'll see, right? It feels like this is something that could get worse. It's something that could definitely lead to a coach being replaced. And at some point, you would think they'd have to make trades. But who do you trade? And what kind of trade value do players on this team have right now? You can't trade Jones. You're not going to trade Kane. You're not going to trade Taves. You're not going to trade DeBrincat. You're not trading Doc. Kubalik's not going anywhere. So your options are really limited in terms of trying to find a solution to turn things around right now. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all of your support. I will talk to you again soon.